There's been a lot of rain. The sea's a bit muddied up with all the rain. What's washed down the rivers. Seabirds out there just waiting for something. The occasional shag out there diving, getting a feed. A lot of driftwood's washed up on this beach. My home is directly above that cliff there. I live just up there and back inland a wee bit. This is where I come to get all my fish. I spend a lot of time out here. I know this area quite intimately. I know when to go out, when not to go out. And sometimes I go out even when I shouldn't go out, like today. After a storm generally, it's not that good for catching fish. Oh, that actually depends. Depends on what fish you're chasing. I find after a bit of a storm at night when things are stirred up, it's good for catching rig. The crabs are all stirred up and that's what they feed off the bottom. I've been coming down here since I was a kid, and it's part of my whole existence really. There used to be a crab industry here when I was younger, paddle crabs, and you could actually make good money with paddle crabs. They'd be caught, and they were big crabs. They were like that round, as big as my hand, and they'd catch them, they'd put them on ice and they'd send them to Tahiti, into Rarotonga, and they'd serve them up there to all the tourists. It's funny, isn't it, because they don't have those same paddle crabs over there, and the tourists probably thought they were eating local produce, but actually they came from right here, from Mapua. And for some unknown reason, the paddle crabs left. They're no longer here. And that also affected other things, because the snapper used to come in and feed on the paddle crabs. Now there's small crabs out there, and I catch them to catch rig, but the big paddle crabs have gone. I just haven't seen them for years. The whole world's changing like that. There's a lot of things which used to be here that are no longer. It's happening very fast. Every day, more and more life force, whether it's a tiny little amoeba or a big animal, are becoming extinct. Everything's changing rapidly. Some people are, oh, I don't want to go out in the sea. I feel just as comfortable out there as I do sitting here on the beach or up in the mountains. It's all just places for me to go and harvest food and bring stuff back to the people I love and myself to feed us. It's pretty normal really. This is my place. It's also a place to come down to get the negative ions. Because the negative ions come from the beach. They come from the sea, they come from the waves crashing on the iron sand and all along there, but there's a negative ion that's produced, which is actually what we need. And when you think of negative, often you associate it with something bad, but actually it's good. The negative ions help relieve you of stress. If you're tired, if you're depressed, it's really good. If you're depressed, go for a walk along the beach. It can help. Years and years ago, I had a bout of depression. It was a funny thing. I saw Dr. Blackmore in Christchurch for hay fever. It was actually a blessing, because I learnt what depression is, because I'm not a person that gets depressed, but I had this drug-induced depression. So I had hay fever, and he stuck cortisone into my arm to fix the hay fever, which you should never do. I think it was actually cortisol he put in there, and it was a cortisone injection. And he put it in, and instantly, almost like within an hour, I just felt low. And I went down, down and down. And the next day, my mum took me out pea picking. I was only like, I would have been 20. I went out with my stepmum and my dad. We're going to a place you could go and pick peas. You could pay to pick as much as you wanted. And I just felt so dead. I felt so low. I couldn't lift my arms and legs, and I said to my mum, I don't know what's wrong, I don't want to do anything, I don't feel like doing anything. She said, that's not like you, are you sick? I said, no. She said, what's the matter? This went on for like 2 or 3 days, and they were really concerned, so they sent me to see a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist said, you've got clinical depression. And I said, what's that? He said, it's what you've got. It's why you don't feel like you're getting joy out of anything. It's why you can't make any decisions on anything. It's why you're struggling to get out of bed. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, what's been happening in your life? I said, well, I've been playing music. I was going out with my girlfriend until I felt like this. I haven't called her since I felt like this. He said, was everything okay with your relationship? And I said, yeah, it was fine. He said, is something troubling you? I said, yeah, this is troubling me. He said, no, before that. And I said, no, not that I could think of or that I'm aware of. And he said, well, you've got clinical depression. He said, what medication's you on? I said, nothing. He said, when did you last see a doctor? I said, well, I saw Dr. Blackmore. Christchurch, saw him probably, I don't know. Actually, I said, that's when the depression started, after I saw him. At that stage, I hadn't even linked it to it. It's funny how you don't. And having that conversation with a psychiatrist, he said, did he give you medication? I said, yes, I got an injection for hay fever. He said, what was it? I said, it was cortisone. I went, okay. He said, well, this is likely a drug-induced depression you've got. And he was right. He said, in time, it'll take about 3 months eventually. 3 months, it'll get less and less. Well, it did get less and less, and he gave me some things to do. And it was really insightful for me. It was a great thing to happen, looking back, because I learnt a lot about depression. And one of the things was walk along the beach, which I did, and it helped. And when I walked along the beach, that's when I met my mate Colin Doherty. That was the day I met him on the beach. I was walking along after that and got talking to him. So I actually made a good friend, and I told him, I said, I've got depression. Back then, that was the 80s. You didn't talk about depression, but I thought, well, I don't care. And this guy was really cool, man, and he's been a friend ever since. That was a meeting of one of my close mates. His story is an interesting story. Anyway, that's one of the things that reminds me of coming down the beach here. And I thought it was something maybe that I should share with you, because if you are suffering depression, being on the beach does help. I'm not really qualified to talk about the things you should do if you suffer depression. I can only tell you from my own experiences. And from my own experiences, what helped me in that next 3 months as the cortisol became less and less was, the doctor said, he told me to set my alarm clock an hour earlier in the morning, because I used to wake up, when I had this depression, I'd wake up really early. I'd wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, which is abnormal for me. I'd wake up really early and I'd be all stuffed up, and then I'd sleep until 10 instead of getting up at my normal time of 6. And so he said, what I want you to do is I want you to set your clock to 5 o'clock. If you get up at 6 normally, set up at 5. When you wake up at 3, if you don't get back to sleep at 5, you've still got to get up. Well, the next day, that's exactly what happened. I woke at 3 and I was awake, and I was lying there feeling sort of weird and not rested and a little bit irritable, a little bit anxious, probably more anxious than anything. And I lay there and I drifted back to sleep, and I've probably been asleep only like 15 minutes. The alarm went off at 5 and I didn't feel like getting up. I got up and did what he told me to do. He told me to either have a cold shower and then go for a walk, or do both. Well, it was the middle of summer and it was pretty hot, so I jumped in the cold shower. Had it been winter, I wouldn't have. The cold shower made a huge difference, and then I went for a walk. And by the time I got from that walk, I was starting to feel half normal. I was still feeling depressed, but I wasn't feeling so lethargic. One thing he didn't talk about, which I would add today to it, would be diet. He didn't talk about diet, but today I would talk about that and say that going on a ketogenic diet definitely helps. Doing intermittent fasting and going on a ketogenic diet, that means getting rid of sugar out of your diet, basically, and refined carbohydrates, made a huge difference to a lot of other people. It has made a huge difference to a lot of other people since, but I didn't have that information then, and I was eating badly. That's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. There are really good helplines you can go to if you do suffer depression. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It was a horrible time, and I can remember one thing. I had some bills I had to pay. I had a bill for the power because I was flatting, and I had a bill for my Visa card, and I couldn't get myself to pay these bills. And I thought, why can't I pay them? I just couldn't motivate myself. So I gained a lot from that, and that's probably why I do talk about mental health, because I say to people I don't get depressed, but that's actually not true. I have been depressed. I've had chemically induced depression. So that's my experience with that. And if you are suffering depression, make sure that you reach out to a professional helpline. People say talk to your friends, and to be honest with you guys, when I talk to my male friends and my female friends when I was going through that patch, nobody wanted to talk about it except that person Colin that I met on the beach. Everybody else was not interested. Colin was the only person that actually listened to me. and my mum and my dad, but all my friends were like, oh yeah, get over it, bro, and different stuff, or oh yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, bud, and then move on, but no actual, how can I help you, what would help the situation. So it is important to reach out to your friends, and maybe things have changed today, what they were in the 80s, but I would implore you to go to a professional site, look online, whatever town you're in, because those guys are professionally trained to help you with it. They know what to say and what to do. Right, I'm going to smash this day out, check on a brother, check on yourself, and go steady. It's beautiful here. I love it. You can actually surf here. There's a bit of a break down there, and sometimes I put a Malibu board out, get a wee ride coming in when it gets a little bit bigger. See this wave here? You could ride that on a Malibu board there. You can ride that just. You want to get a fast ride? It's about as good as it gets here in Nelson. Absolutely beautiful. See you later. Have a great day.